be done for the year since December gets a little crazy. My name is Danielle. I am the Director of Marketing at Diffuser Industries. And we're located in Boulder on 8th and Pearl. We do strategy, product, design, and development for brands and well-funded startups, and are definitely speaking all over town in terms of data visualization, and that's why we like to have ownership of this group here. Twitter also helps sponsor and I guess put this group on. We will probably be at their office next month, just so you know. We've got a tentative date for November 17th, so you can kind of keep that on your radar. One thing I would ask everybody to do is if you have a computer, a tablet, a mobile device, if you have a Twitter account, if you could log on right now, what we'd really like to do, we are broadcasting this on Periscope tonight, and so we'd like to put it out there for the rest of the Periscope audience to see, and anybody who wasn't able to make it tonight. Thank all of you, of course, for braving the GOP debate traffic to be here.
Yeah, like they were interested in data.
Right, yeah, that's why.
That's how you
so if you could get on your Twitter account and go to @Diffuser Industries, it's DFUZR Industries. And the very top tweet is that we are on Periscope, and if you could do us a favor and retweet that, that would be wonderful. That way, again, of course, the Periscope community and people that are on Twitter will be able to see that we've got this live stream going on tonight. And of course, we plan on doing this for all future D3 meetups, so if for whatever reason you aren't able to make it in person, you are at least able to catch the stream there. It also means that afterwards we'll have the video downloaded and you'll be able to access it on our website later as well. Just a couple of housekeeping things before we get started. We like to check in about, first of all, does anybody have any events that they want to announce? Anything that's coming up? All right. Is anybody hiring right now? Wow, okay. Oh, go for it. Yes.
Hi, I'm Laura. I work at Knuth. We're a software consultancy. Did any of you guys know Angular and are interested in consulting?
Perfect. So Laura at Knuth is looking for an Angular consultant. All right. So definitely catch up with her if you're interested. Is anybody looking for work right now? All right. We'll start with you back here.
My name is Tom. I do full stack JavaScript mostly. I have about almost 2 years worth of professional experience. Come talk to me.
All right.
I'll come talk to you. I'll come talk to you afterwards.
Okay. Anybody else? Go for it.
I am Hillary Sky, recent Galvanize graduate out of Monaco, and college graduate. I have lean stack experience talking about Angular. I do first front end, but I do full stack. And I'm recent college grad.
Great. So I see somebody over here. Oh, both of you. Fight it out.
Mike Scout. I'm a freelance data visualizer, data analyst, and I have a science background, so I sort of use a lot of my science background to understand data and ask questions. Very interesting. Okay.
Awesome. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Neil Barron. I work in graphic design right now and also a bit of web design and self-teaching JavaScript. So I'm actually going to be doing front end, or that's the plan for now. So
Cool.
maybe see you guys around.
Anybody else?
My name is Thomas David Keo. I graduated from Galvanize with my individual classes. Jenny. So we're all now we're all team stack.
Perfect. Anybody else? I know you guys just all walked in. Are you guys looking for work? No. Okay, perfect. So if you are, or if you are hiring, or you are looking and you didn't get a chance to talk, make sure you come and talk to me afterwards. I would be happy to make sure that it goes on our D3 meetup, or that we tweet it out. We can also hopefully help connect you with other people that might be looking for you. What we have tonight, I know that Fiona Piggott of Twitter was unable to make it. She is unfortunately sick, but she is going to be speaking at our November 17th D3 meetup, so definitely look for that. But because of that, Jenny Knuth has, of course, graciously offered to speak for a little bit longer than she was planning on, so that you guys have an opportunity to really dig into how to Our hashtag tonight is D3Boulder, so if you are going to tweet things, make sure that you use that hashtag as well. Jenny is a UX developer with CIRES, and I'm going to go ahead and let her take it away from here. Thanks so much.
Yes, I'm also a recent grad from the Galvanized Full Stack program, and the CIRES grant is an NSF grant. It isn't a full-time funded job, so I am looking for a full-time job. And I do, yeah, if you're a senior developer and you want a junior developer who has a lot of technologies like Node.js and JavaScript and D3, that's possibly let's see, sorry. Okay, so I might have to say this again, sorry. Okay, so we're gonna tonight make a heat map, and is that good enough? Okay. Testing. Okay. Great. Tonight we're going to make a heat map, and it's called a heat map. In the D3 literature, even though in this case it doesn't have anything to do with heat or a map. So just so you know, it's tracking activity and its distribution. And in this case, we're going to do distribution of activity over the days of the week on one axis and the weeks of the year on another axis. And so down here it shows what the final product will look like. And it's very similar to the GitHub commit chart. This is the guy, my postdoc, who is the D3 guy. He writes a lot of great tutorials, and I think he started D3 as his PhD project at Stanford, and he's worked with New York Times and has a team helping him out. Anyway, so this is what we're going to, something very similar to this. So the data we're going to use is days of the week going this way, and weeks of the year across the top. And then in the grid, we'll have a value that will be color-coded, mapped to a color. So that's the rough outline. Oh, and I did want to say, so if you want to code along, this is the gist. You can fork this and clone this from GitHub. So if you go to gist on GitHub, or just search for gist D3 heat map tutorial, you'll find it. And then also, here's the bit.ly address. So does everybody have that? Or I did send it out before the meeting too, so I don't know how many people got that. But is everybody ready to move on? Okay. You can also just search just for D3 heat map tutorial, and you'll find it. Okay, so just a really basic introduction. You want to fork the gist to your own account. Copy the clone URL to your clipboard. And then in your terminal, you can use the git clone command and paste the URL, and then follow that with the name of the directory that you want your heat map to be in. Otherwise, you'll get the name of the gist, which is a long hash number. Great, and then just move into that directory that you just created, and then in your favorite text editor, go ahead and open index.html, app.js, and style.css. And that's what I'm going to do right now. So it's going to be interesting coding with the microphone. Okay, so I've commented out most of the code because I wanted to do a code along and step through the code so you can understand what's going on. I've also made a lot of stuff really simplified. We're going to start just setting up our margins in the typical D3 way, and it's not very responsive. That's, you got to walk before you can run. So we're just going to set it up with a width of 1,000 pixels here. And let me just see what overview of D3. I guess most people here have used D3. Who has not used D3 here? Okay, great. So there's people who have it. So I'll go ahead and just walk through it. And if other people have things to add, please feel free. So D3 is a JavaScript framework that works with different kinds of data and builds charts based on your data. It's not like you have to build a chart and then build a new chart if you get new data. It will generate the chart from your data, which is the really powerful powerful, and it's written in JavaScript, like I said. So it helps to know JavaScript, and it uses this chaining methods a lot like jQuery. So you call a D3 method, and then you can chain other methods on with dot notation. And I'm trying to think what else is important about D3. I guess we'll get into some of the key features of it. But what it does is it binds the DOM to the data, and it binds that to the chart so that you can render the data through this data binding of arrays. So I've hard-coded some arrays here for our data, but we'll also get some from an array of objects that we'll get in a data file as well. Okay, so let me just show you my postdoc's ideas about how to set up a basic D3 page here. Okay. So this, that's Nick Jostock. This is his post on margin conventions. So it explains it really well. So if you Google Mike Bostock and margin conventions, you will get to this website. He has a great blog. And so first you define the margin object with 4 sides. So my margin object is right here at the top. So this is an object in JavaScript, and the top margin is defined right, bottom, and left. And you can change those numbers later, but we won't have to change them everywhere. You just need to change them in that one place. And you define your margin object, and then you define the width and height as inner dimensions. So we subtract the inner dimensions. So you have a graphic inside of your frame. So that way you can put your chart data here, but your axes can go outside in the margins. And it's not that complicated, but you just think through it and you can see what's going on. And this brings up the other thing that's different about D3 from other web programming is that it uses SVGs. So the chart we're doing tonight we could have done with HTML and made a table, but I did it with SVGs because I think that's one of the powerful features of D3. And the difference with SVGs from HTML is the elements have different names. So an SVG is an element. And then the one that we're going to use is called a G, and it stands for group, and it's a lot like a div in HTML. Another difference is that whereas HTML is a box model, where you have boxes and glue and padding and margins, SVG is all on coordinates, X and Y coordinates, and the X and Y coordinates start from the upper left corner. So Y is positive in this direction, and X is positive in this direction. And so again, we're going to try not to hard code a lot of X and Y's. We want to do relative distances in our code. So, and the other thing with SVG is it takes different attributes than HTML. HTML would take color, for example. SVG takes fill. So we'll talk a little bit about that too. If you're not familiar with SVG, there's a lot of online resources, and you can get up to speed pretty quickly. So, all right. So let's go back to our code. Okay, so we've set up our margins. We made the width without the margins, so the width of our big chart. We defined a grid size, and here I define the grid size as the width divided by 53, because that's the number of weeks in a year if you have a half week on each end. And then the height is based on the grid size, and again, subtracting the margins from the top and bottom. And then the data that we were talking about on the y-axis, we want the days. So I'm going to just do the weekdays, so I can find the weekdays here. And again, you can generate these arrays from your data, but here I've hard-coded them just for simplicity. So I have an array of days. I have an array of weeks that I, again, just hard-coded as I believe. You can make your own. You can base this on a calendar. So this is actually 2014 weeks, January. And so you could do a logic where every Monday, that's a new month, add a initial for that month, or add the word for that month, and generate that array. But we have it hard-coded here for simplicity. And then the values that we're going to have in our data are activities: hike, bike, swim, run, stretch, climb, lift. And then we're going to map those activities to colors. So again, I've hard-coded some colors. You can use different color mappers, or color brewer is a common one to select aesthetically pleasing colors that element in the DOM. So let's walk through the other two files. I made it really small. Here's my index.html file. And I've commented out the CSS, and I've commented out the library that I'm going to bring in here in a minute. So basically, we just have D3, we're importing D3, and we're importing our app.js file, which is the file we were just looking at. And then in the middle, we have, in our body, one div with the ID of chart, and that's where we're going to put our chart. So that's pretty simple and straightforward. Obviously, you can use that as complicated as you want. Same with the style CSS. I kept it really minimal. Okay, so the next step would be to run your D3 program at this point and see what we get. Actually, I want to one more step before we do that. So we set up our margins. We set up our SVG. So right here, this is where we connect the SVG to the DOM. So we call D3, select the ID of chart, append the SVG, give it a width, add back the margins so that our SVG is bigger, and then append a G. So that's the same as a div. So we're going to append that chart in the middle. And we want to translate it from the upper left so that it has the upper left margin. And then this is really the function we're going to start with, the meat of our chart. This is our heat map. So we will make a variable. Oh, so let me just explain what I'm doing here too, actually. So the way I'm doing it now, we're going to use hard-coded data. When you use data in JavaScript, you need to call the data. And so in JavaScript, that uses a callback function. And so you need to wrap your data inside of that callback function. The functions that are working with that data, sorry, you can't hear me back there. Okay, sorry. So that data will only be inside the callback function. So when you work with your data, you want to be inside the callback function. So that's what we'll do later. We'll wrap our functions in the data, the call to the data, but we're not doing that now. So right now we're just going to hard code the data. So here's our heat map. We're going to select all. This is a nice D3 command. There's select and select all. And you select elements, and these elements don't actually need to exist. That's kind of the fun of D3. It will create the elements for you. You can call elements with IDs, well, not select all with IDs, select with an ID, or select all with a class, or you can select different, Gs or SVG or divs on your data. Then we're going to bind the data, and right now our data is just going to be the array with the value of 1. And then you enter means cycle through the array, and for each element in the array, do the next step, which is append a rectangle, that's an SVG element, and give that rectangle a width of grid size and a height of grid size, and we're going to give it a fill of the first color in our color array. So I don't know, how many people have got the server running and have run the index.html the first thing? Great, so what do you see?
It's just right.
Yeah, a little purple square. So let's see, I should walk through doing that maybe, but here's what you should see on your screen at this point. So if you want to run your D3 file, you'll need to run a server. And I hope if most people, I think, probably know how to do this, but from your terminal, start a server in the folder where your index.html file is, and you should be able to pull this up. I'm hoping there's enough people around that can help people who maybe don't have it up and running. Is anybody having trouble, or talk to your neighbors? Okay, does everybody have a purple square so far? Great. Okay, so that was just the basic setup. We made a really basic heat chart. Woohoo! Okay, so fun. And so now let's play with our data a little bit, just see how it works if we add some stuff in here. So we're going to add some more numbers here. And what it's going to do then is go through each element in the array, append a rectangle, give it a width and a height and a style. And what happens now is you're going to get the exact same thing. We refresh. However, if we look in the dev tools, which you inspect element, you will see we go down to our div here. That's where our chart is. We go down to our SVG, we open that up, and we go down to our G. And inside that now, we have 4 rectangles. However, they're all on top of each other. So it has created those elements for us, just like we asked it to, even though they didn't exist before. So now I'm gonna try to type this, play with that a little bit, and see if we can give them some X and Y coordinates. So what you do then is to call the data is you use a function, a callback function, and it's usually just called D for data, and the D just indicates each element in the array. So, well, actually, here, so we're going to attribute X, so we're going to give it the X attribute. We're going to say function D, and then simply return D. So that will cycle through each element in the data array and give the value, X value, to a D, which is, in this case, each element in the array. So what will happen now? You can try to guess. But I'll show you. We'll refresh. And it didn't work. Okay, so let's see. What did I do wrong? Let's look at our div here, and look at our X and Y's. And someone can tell me, too, if they spotted it. Oh, I know, it's the X. I'm sorry?
It's just shifting the boxes across next to each other.
I think, I'm sorry, it's not. Oh yeah, you know what? Yeah, exactly right. So what we need to do is D times, let's do times this, is it grid width? Is that what we call it? No. Grid size. Here it is. Exactly. Okay. Okay, great. Now we have the boxes moving over the number of grid widths that's equivalent to their value as well. And then we can do the same thing, like let's keep playing with that. Let's see. I'm going to do the same thing with the Y coordinates now. And somebody tell me what they expect to happen when I refresh. Right?
We'll get rows.
So it's a diagonal now because the X and Y's are equal to each other at this point, and 1, 3, 5, and we can play around with it. We could change it to 6 instead of 5. Closer together, you don't get it all spaced out. Nice and neat. Okay, cool. So that's our basic demonstration of how D3 works with arrays and data. And so that data command right there binds that elements to this data. And you don't need to redo that. You can use the enter command once, and it will read each element in the array. If the array changes or the data changes, it will reread the data and change it up. And the other commands here, you can look in the D3 documentation, but there's enter, exit, and it's like CRUD on your data, basically. So you can do things when your data is removed to do interesting things with your elements and your graphics. So that's fun to play with, but we're not going to do that today. But that's something to look at. That's sort of the key features of D3 is this selecting, binding to the data, and then entering your data or exiting your data. Okay, so now we'll use real data. So I put a file in here, and it's just a tab-separated file that I made in Google Sheets or something. But any tab-separated file, you can also use JSON, you can use comma-separated values. There's different D3 functions that you can use. And the data basically just has user ID, a date in format with slashes, a duration in hours, a type, and a day part. And we don't need all this data for our chart. We're going to need the day of the week and the week of the year, and then we're going to need the type. So I'll show you how to work with your data so that you don't have to have special data. Basically, you can use really any kind of data. All right. Okay. Okay, so here is on line 43 here is where it starts our call to the data. So we say D3, and we use the TSV method, which is tab separated values. And it takes a format like this. You can put your data in here, and it will parse the data for you. You use your path to your data, and then a callback, which is this function here, and that function will format your data that you want to use in your graphic. So this is where you define the variables for your graphic. And then you have another callback here, and this is the meat of your graphic. Outside of this function, your data will be undefined. So we need to wrap our whole program inside this function. And this is where we make the graph. So I'm going to uncomment 43 through 55 here. And then we have to go all the way to the end and uncomment this last little bit. So that's the wrapper for our chart. And it wraps the data in there. Okay, so then we'll talk about this function right here from line 44 down. So this is what makes our data object. And this is what D3 is going to use. And this is where we use our library. So we need the day of the week, and our data had just dates, like January 20th, 2014. And I personally, maybe someone here knows what day of the week that is, but I don't have that skill. And same with the week. So what we do is we use this moment library. So you call moment on it. You take D, date. Date was the field name that was from our data. And you tell it what format it's in, and you get the day from it and the week from it. So right now we have to go into our index.html and uncomment our moment library. So now the moment library is also in this repo, but we don't want to open it or anything. So now we can use that moment function and get some real data. So let's see what happens now. Let's go back down here. We have, let's use our data. So right in this function, we put in our data as a parameter. And so here we can append it, use that variable. So let's do that. Yeah, and that's usually what it's called, data, even though that might be confusing that it's data, but that's what we're calling it from up there. Okay, so let's see what happens now. We will get one rectangle. However, we now have, they're all on top of each other still, but they're a lot of rectangles now. So it's reading our data just fine. And we'll get rid of these two functions we made to play around. And then here we're going to use our weeks and our days. So again, function D cycles through each element in our array. So now it's an array of objects. Our objects look like this right here. We have a D.day, that's the day, a D.week, that's the week, and a D.type, that's the type of activity. So when we uncomment these two lines, it will use the week and the day. And I think the week, I think it starts at 1, and the day starts at 0 for Sunday, but we're using Monday, so we want to subtract 1. That's what the subtract 1 is. And then multiply it by the grid size. So let's just see what that looks like. Okay, great. Now we're filling in our data. So we have the days of the week going up and down. We have the weeks of the year going this way. But we haven't mapped the value in the data to a color yet. So let's do that next. And in this case right now, we have that hard-coded, so we don't need to do that inside of our function where we call the data. We can do that up here at the beginning when we initialize all the values that are independent of the data.
Could you go
Great, so this is where we're going to define our color scale. So we define a scale, D3 scale ordinal, and we're going to map our domain to our range. Our domain is going to be the values that we have hard-coded above. So we have this array of values, and we're going to map it to this range of colors. So when you define a scale, you always have a domain and a range. And I'll show you in a minute how we can define those based on our data. We don't have to hard-code them. But here, for simplicity, we've just defined them. We know what our values are going to be, and we've chosen our colors. Okay, and then back in our heat map function, or block, these are called blocks of code in D3 when you chain everything together. So here's our heat map block. We're going to change the color now. So we're not going to use this color, the first color in the array for every element. We'll use fill, that is the color scale with D.type passed in so it can map to the color. Okay, great. So now we're getting some colors and some values, and it's starting to look nice. I can show you now how to do that with just the data without hard coding the data. So lines 57.
We're still on 82.
Oh, you want me to show you 82? Okay.
So
Did it make it? Okay.
it's return function, return colors.
Are you trying to type it in or just uncomment?
Oh, but yeah, let's
I wanted to make it faster, but yeah. So anyways, I'm going to uncomment these lines now. And this is just code basically to generate the values, our domain, our range, from our data. So it's pretty simple. Well, it uses the reduce function. So you have passed in data, you take data, you reduce it, and you turn it into an object. It doesn't really matter what value you give it. The reason I did that with an object is just because there aren't sets in JavaScript. You want unique values. You want to find out all the unique values, and for each new value, for each key in your object is a new value. You push that to your new array. So now we have an array called new values that's based on the data in our data, not something that we knew in advance. We may not know how many categories there are or what they are, and this is a good way to find out. And I console log them at the end here, so we'll refresh, look at our console, and here we have an array of values from our data. And to use those, we would need to do two things. We need to we need to move our color scale back into this function. So I'll do that right now. Okay, so we'll do it right after, right when we start this function. So now this is going inside of the call to the tab separated values. So it's inside of our last callback. Because we're going to use new values here instead of values. Oh, we have to do it after we get new values, actually. So let's do that. Okay, so we have our array of new values. I'll go back up and comment out our old values. And I did sort them at the end just so I would have control over the order. If they're in an object, I don't have control over the order. If they're sorted, I do. It's alphabetical, but that's fine in this case. All right, so I guess you can't really tell, but yeah, they're there. So that's. So I had hard-coded values previously, and now I'm just showing you how to get the values from the data you have in case you don't know what values you might have from your data. So you can do this with all of these arrays, but if you do that, you need to make sure that it's inside yeah, that was completely optional step. Like it works fine hard-coded. You can also leave your color value scale, your color scale defined inside. It doesn't hurt anything, but it's just a convention in D3 to define everything that doesn't depend on your data outside of the data, and then inside of the data, you have to have the stuff that works with the data inside the function. Okay, great. So now we just a couple of styling things we can do to make it look more like a map. So these lines are just SVG attributes. Let's see what I got here. Rx and Ry just round the corners, so it's the same as border radius, and we're giving it a class of border. So at this point, we can go ahead and uncomment our CSS file, which again I showed you is really minimalist. But we go to our index.html, you can uncomment this one, and now it's starting to look like a chart. So what do we need now though? What's missing from our chart?
Space.
I'm sorry, what space? Axes. Thank you. Yeah, we don't know what we're plotting here, so let's add some axes. In this case too, our axes, we have defined our arrays here with the values for our axes. So we don't need to do the axes inside of the call to the data. But if you didn't do that, if you wanted to define your axes based on your data itself, you didn't know what the range was going to be, you would do it inside of your call to the data. So, okay, we'll just walk through this pretty quickly because it's not too difficult. It's stuff we've done before. So we define day labels. We select all. We give it. We can make this up honestly. So this is just we're labeling it. We're not going to use this class. You could, but we're not. We're calling data and binding the days, our days array, as data. Enter means it's going to cycle through each element in our data array, and it's going to append text, which is an SVG element. The text is going to be a function, D, return D. So can someone tell me what that means based on what I said before? What will it return? No? I can walk it through again, just testing. So, okay, so yeah, so it's going to go through the data, and D is going to be each element in the data. So in this case, the data is days, so each element is what we've defined up here. So MT, blah, blah. Then we give it, we don't want to move it on the x-axis at all. They're all going to be as far left as possible. And then this is the fun part, so on the y-axis, we want to move up and down. We do D, again, each element in the data, and you can also call it index, and we'll return index times grid size, so that we have one element per grid element. This is another SVG thing. You can, this helps you place where the text is going to go, if it's at the start, the end, or the middle. And here we're going to use end. And then we just want to center it. So this whole little thing, and this is a hard-coded value that you probably want to avoid this as well, but it's, this is pretty much half a line, so it keeps it in the middle of the grid. I mean, have a for text in the middle of the grid, and then giving it a class as well. So let's see what that looks like. Okay, great. So, and it's really the same thing for your week labels. So we're doing the exact same thing. The main difference is our data is bound to the weeks array this time. And again, it would be nice to generate the weeks automatically, not have to hard code every year. Append the text, return the exact same thing pretty much. Well, I guess this time the y is 0 and you're moving along the x-axis. So there we go. So as we filled in more data, we would fill out our year of activities. examples in the D3 literature. And I guess I tried to show it with the colors, like you can pull the colors that way. So I guess I didn't take the time to do it for the weeks of the year, but you could figure out like, okay, when is a Monday on a new month? Oh yes, you would do it. Yeah, you would do it inside of that function. But that's okay. You would do it. Yeah, you would do it down in here, like down here, where we have our where we did color scale and stuff. Yeah, it does make it a little more complicated, but that's the fun part. I didn't want to do that tonight because it felt harder. But yeah, what?
It's like building a calendar.
Yes. Well, the moment library, I have to say, is great. Does a lot of that. Yeah, time and date is amazingly complicated.
Yeah.
And figuring out the logic. That's fun. But yeah, okay. Okay, great. So what else do we need to understand our graphic here? What's missing still? Yes.
Not spread out.
Not spread out. Okay, yeah, and
It's all spread out.
it's all spread. Well, it actually isn't spread out because I only have like 8 weeks of data or 9 weeks of data. So if we had more data for the year, we would spread it out. And actually, if we had generated the week from our data, it wouldn't have put all these weeks that have no data. And we can hard code that if we want. Like we could just take it out. Maybe we should do that.
Access labels.
Oh yeah, were you looking at the documentation?
Oh no, you were asking what else?
Oh, access labels. Oh, well that's true. Yeah, we can do
Because
that.
we've got
Yeah.
units, but yeah.
We've got units. Anything else? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm wondering, when you call data enter, is it executed only for the new set of data, or is it executed for entire array?
So I'm sorry, can you say it again? So like here, I say data, and I say days, and I say enter.
Right.
It will go through every element in my days array. So if I change my days array, is that what you're asking?
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's right. Let's say that I add a few more data
Yes.
points. Is it going to be executed for an extra few data points, or is it going to go entire array?
Oh, it will.
Because I'm worried about speed. I assume
Speed.
that D3 is taking care of it by doing enter. That if the
It will
data
look for,
set
it's like
changes-
update. I think it is like update. It doesn't, yeah.
Oh,
And
I
then exit, it only does the ones that are leaving. But we can check the documentation. Does anybody happen to know?
It does again. So
It
it's
does, yes. So it's like update. Yeah. So it is fast. Okay, so I think we only have data through, I don't know, if it was through the beginning of March. So we got rid of all this, which you know I'm reluctant to get rid of honestly, but let's just do it. Okay, let's just go. Oh, did I do that? I don't want to do that. I wanted to do, what do I want to do? I want to do like a return. And just comment that out. And do this in array. Okay, so let's see. Okay, great. So it just reads the data that we have. So we can fake it and pretend we're getting it from our data. Okay, great. Well, another thing, I guess what I was looking for was, we don't know what these colors mean yet. So let's make a legend for our chart. So here I'm going to uncomment this. This is something we can define again, initialize at the beginning before we have our data. We're going to make it 3 grid sizes wide, mostly because our words are small. If we had longer words, we might want to make it a different size. And now these last 3 blocks down here, we're going to uncomment these. I wonder if I should do them all. I'll do them the first 2. So these all have to do with defining our legend element. So we're going to go back to our SVG that we created. Let me show you where that was. We created our SVG way at the beginning here by selecting the directive. So we're going to select that same element, our SVG. Oh, we appended a G to it also, so this will go in that. So we're going to select all. We're going to just call it legend, give it the class of legend. The data in our legend is going to be our color scale. And again, we're going to return our color for each element in the data. Append a G and give it the class of legend. Then for each one of those, we're going to make a rectangle with the legend element width that we defined above times the index. Give it a Y of grid size times 6 to give it height. And that's to make it below the chart. We have 5 days of the week, so we want it to be like the 6th day. And then give it a class, round the corners, and fill it with the color that corresponds to the data. And I gave it just an opacity of 16% for okay, great. So now we have our rectangles added, and we need to give them labels. So we start again at the legend level, which is just appended here, the SVG label. When I first did this, I was confused because I was trying to do it the HTML way, and I thought, I have these rectangles, I'll put words inside the rectangles, and that's not the SVG way or the D3 way. So what you want to do instead is append text and give it the same exact coordinates as your rectangles, but you don't put stuff inside. It doesn't work that way, so don't frustrate yourself with it. So yeah, so we append text, and we just give it basically, it's already bound to the data here, domain, and we give it the width, and this just centers the text in the rectangle. And this makes it, trying to think what that does again. So grid size times 6, that's the bottom, plus, just centers it vertically and gives it a class of label. And we're using the middle text anchor this time, not start or end. And you can just play with those and make sure that they're working for you. Okay, so now I don't know if can you see that? So we have labels now, and those colors correspond to the value in our data. And that's one thing I want to add then. So there's just 2 things left. We have our chart, we have our axes, we have our legend. But one thing I like to add is the titles, so that when you hover over a rectangle, you get the information about the date and the activity, and also a little animation to make it interesting. So we'll just do that really quickly with a short example. So we'll do the titles first here. Okay, so we're back using our heat map element now that we defined right here, and that data is the data from our data set, our TSV file. And so it will go through each element in the data, and I'm going to make a title that's called D.type and D.date. So actually, I commented that out because we weren't using it before. But when we make our data object, new question, make our data object here, we have D.type. We can also make D.date based on the date from our TSV file. So this, again, is a really important step that takes your data and defines what elements you want to use in your graph. So we were using the day, the week that we defined with our moment library, and the type of activity that gave us the color. And then now we want the actual date again. And that was the number that was like 1/20/14. Okay, so a title is an actual element. So we're going to append a title. That's like HTML, I think, or is it SVG? Somebody know? I think it's HTML. It's what happens. It's like a tooltip. And then function D, we're going to say D.type, add a space, and D.date. Return that, and see what happens. Oh no, I went somewhere else. Let's try it. I opened a new window. Okay. Great. Okay, so you didn't see anything happen, but now when I hover, you can see different than other ways to add animation. So you add a transition, give it a duration, and in this case, we're just going to change the colors. So we're going to use, again, fill the colors with D.type, and opacity of 60%, but we're going to go from the base color, which was our first color in the array. So what I'm going to do is comment out this line again and go back to our default line so that when the squares first appear, they'll be that first color in our array, and then over a second, they will transition to the color that's equivalent to their type. So that makes a nice little gem-like shading thing. And you could do that with the legend too, but I kind of felt like the legend should stay, like should just be the legend. So anyway, so that's an example of how to do animation. So to recap just really quickly, we initialize, we define our values that are independent of the data. And in that case, that includes our axes. Then we call our data here with our TSV method. We define our data object, what data we're going to be using, and then the next function is when we do all our work and create our chart. And so now you could bring in a different file. I guess as long as it had similar values in it, you could create a chart with any other data set that you want. So, any questions?
I missed this again, but where do you define T parameter that you're passing to it? Is that just a data set in terms of D?
Yeah, so D is going to be it's defined by the D3 library, or the D3 method. And D is always just, you can call it whatever you want. It's just traditionally called D. And it doesn't have to be called D every time. You could call it day, or week, or color.
So is it like an iterator for whatever?
Yes, exactly. So D3 will iterate through the array that is the data. So it needs to be an array. The data needs to be an array. So it can be an array of objects. It can be an array of numbers. An array of characters, strings. And it goes through each element. So D is always going to be each element in the array. And that right there, I think, is D3. Like that's that data binding, and what is it called? Data join. It's the data join. If you have a good mental image of that, you've gone far with D3. And what's really nice too is you don't have to use this function D, but you can use it everywhere. You can just say, oh, I want to do something to every element, and I'm just going to call function D. You can use I and index as well, and start doing all kinds of stuff with it. So you could, just put functions all over the place. Any other questions or? Yeah.
I mean, well, on that note, do you know any good sample data sets to play around with that work well with this?
Oh, data sets.
Yeah. Or like
That's a good
source
question.
to get sample data sets that would be good for historical data.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's all kinds of APIs out there that would be maybe a little challenging for a beginner to.
Don't need lazy to find that.
Or go to one of the D3 sites that
Let me
has
show you guys
awesome
that.
examples, and they
Yeah.
snag their data from all sorts of sweet all sorts of places where you're like, oh yeah, this public organization uses that this data. There's a lot of cool ideas you can pop up with that.
This is a great place to start. So this is D3.js.org, and it gives a little information here, and it has good tutorials and things. But this is the best. This is a wiki, so everybody can add to this. People add their own, and you can add yours. You can just go down here, and in fact, this is how I got started too. You just go find a really cool chart, and you click on it, and you can find. I don't know if this one's really cool. We'll see. Okay, oops. Okay, great. Well, this one doesn't. Oh no, here it is. Okay, great. So it'll give you the code, and I wonder if it will give you the code. Most of them do. You can usually find the code for them, and the data as well. Let's get the source code. So
It's from the congressional office.
yeah, and you can put in. So here's the HTML.
Wonder if we'll be touching on this tonight.
Yeah, right. I don't think they like data. I don't know. Yeah.
One thing is, if you get a data set, and we haven't really touched on tonight, there's a date parser function. Pretty much all Yeah. Sure. I think it's
probably in there.
it will be
In the documentation.
If you're using Moment.
You don't have to use Moment. So he's saying that, let's see if we can find it. It's pretty well documented. So I think if you go to the API reference for D3, you can, see if there's I think it's under selections maybe, is that, or?
D3 is a date scale. So like if you're doing a time series or anything like that, if you're lining something out like a series of dates, it will parse it to
I wonder if it's in the parsing, it's probably in the data, like the SVG calls and stuff, right?
It's fine for days.
Okay. Date time formatting, so time scale, so here we go. So great, you can read all about it. Yes, well, there's a lot of good information and a lot of good examples out there. So have fun. Play, put stuff on the wiki. Anybody else? Any other questions? Yeah, and I apologize if that was super beginner for some people, but I'm pleased that we had some people. It seems like that was just the right level of interaction. And yeah.
I'm wondering when I go to like a NOAA like series,
Yeah.
most of the chunk of the funding comes from NOAA, right?
It's actually no series. I think it's separate. Actually, it's
They have
like
subcontract from NOAA. So when I
Yeah.
go to NOAA, like let's say SPIPC, like a Space Weather Prediction Center,
Yeah.
everything seems like very static. Do you see some kind of like a change in the future that it's going to be more interactive, with the visualizations?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's starting like it's interesting the way academia has worked until recently. I'm working with geologists actually, and they've all had like their own little models, and they keep their own little models close to their heart. They don't know about version control or anything. So they've just learned in the last year, about GitHub and this idea of actually making it accessible and something on the web, for example, that people can use is new. So I guess my position is new as NSF funded to get the work that all these data people are doing out to the community so people can use it. And I guess the organization that is Systems, CSDMS, I don't know if you know them, but they're trying to make these models that are more accessible to a wide variety of people and integrate it. So the web obviously is a great way to do that, but they don't know anything about websites or web development or presentation, so that's a good niche.
I talked to Rodney Webb, right?
Okay, yeah.
And then like I mentioned that it's like maybe the nice way to present the data would be like I put some like the data. I mean people.
Well, an API would be great. I don't think they even know.
visualizations.
Yes, and then also I know NSIDC, the National Center for Snow and Ice Data, has been trying for the past couple of years to hire a UX designer. I just think they haven't gotten their act together. But that kind of thing is happening, and I guess that's what I was going to say is that my funding is like very part-time from NSF. They never will fund a 100% position, but if there are enough institutes at the university that could get, a 1/5 time position, 1/4 time position, whatever, then you can make a full-time position for somebody to actually get this stuff out there. So.
Just for the organization of this event, that might be something we're looking into, biting off a small piece of a project